So I stood up on top of my APC and I just went, Brad, to the director. Brad! Brad! And finally, Brad, he goes, what? I said, if anybody asks you, you tell them the two's ready to fucking rock. And all of a sudden, snap, click, bang, rock, rolling, goes, rock. And my guys told me inside the tank, they went, fucking right. It just got everybody going, ah! And he came up to me after the shoot and he said that in that moment, he was starting to freak out a little bit. He says, I think I may have bitten off more than I could chew with this. And he said that moment kicked everything in. And it was just taking those dry, dull, crazy moments. I channel my uncles Rick and Reg, who have that ability to kind of liven it up with one little burst.
Welcome to Season 3 of the Fifi Uncensored podcast. It is now, I'm so excited for our Episode 5, Part 1 with my guest, Jeremy Ratchford, who I was just smiling from ear to ear while we had our interview. And as I listened back, there was just so many sweet moments that I couldn't stop continuing to smile. So I look forward to you pulling up a seat and listening as we touch on so many subjects. And it all has to do with energy, inspiration, acting, and fatherhood, and a lot of in between. So pull up a seat, take a listen. Here we go.
Hello.
What's happening, baby?
Look at how handsome you are. Seriously, so delicious.
You look fantastic. You do, baby.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Life ultimately has been really great. Life is great. Happy New Year, Jeremy Ratchford.
Anything I say can and will be used against me?
Oh my God, both of us. That's why I do this podcast. So anything can fly out of one's mouth. That is why it's called Fifi Uncensored. So deep breath. And thank you so much for being here as my guest. I have loved and adored you probably since I first laid eyes on you in 26 on like what I thought was going to be 4 weeks of my life or 4 episodes of, just kind of coming in at the tail end of your 3rd season on Cold Case. Little did I know it would be, 5 seasons and 16 years later. And as madly in love as, you make people want, just fall for you from the get-go, Jeremy. So I want to say thank you for being my guest and thank you for being a part of something that really matters to me, which is using our connections and our conversations and sharing life experiences and why I think this is so important. And one of the things that I always felt about you, who was somebody who gathered people together really well, because you're like a magnet. You make people feel at ease. You make people feel welcome. And I want to take and launch from there and say, I know you are originally from Canada. We're basing this out of Los Angeles right now, right? You're also here. And, but you came from originally Canada, and my Canadian mates, I always think of as like my Illinois, Wisconsin mates. Much more earthy, much more like have a moral compass. Now I'm making a very umbrella statement, of course, because, not everybody runs and rules their life that way. But you came from Canada. And to me, that makes sense about who you are, which may sound really crazy. But I want you to speak on that and your child growing up in your childhood in Canada and how that formed you.
there's an interesting take. I watched now I can't remember the name. I mean, there's so my eldest son was on set with me for a movie, and I was working with another guy. It was I think it might be released soon, but we did it years and years and years ago.
Yeah.
One of the characters, when he's in distress, his two spiritual guides are Elvis and Jesus. And they hired me to play Elvis and this other guy to play Jesus, and he was hysterical. And he was a really nice man. His name escapes me right now. Haven't really seen it in 8 years, but at the end of that day, Dex, my eldest, who was young, 8 years old or something, he turned to me and he just said, "Dad, that guy's so nice, he could be Canadian." And I was just like, that kind of, when I told that actor that too, he was just like, he did the same thing. He was like, "Oh my God." He was like, "It's so nice." And I don't know what the Canadianism is. Because there's, you can find some absolute nightmares in Canada as well. But for the most part, we're, to put it another way too, there's when you look at icons in Canada,
Mm-hmm.
one that sticks out, like here in the States, like John Wayne was always talking to the camera and telling people how to do it and God fearing and and there was always this machismo and one of the biggest icons in Canada is a guy called Terry Fox. Do you know about Terry?
I don't think I do know about Terry Fox, interestingly enough. Who is Terry Fox?
Terry Fox, back in the 80s, was diagnosed with cancer. He'd already lost his leg. And to bring awareness to the cause, he said, "I'm going to run. I'm going to jog across Canada." And he dipped his foot in the water at the Atlantic Ocean and started running a marathon a day. And he had this style of running because this is early days of prosthetics too. But he ran on this one leg and he didn't make it because during the run, he developed lung cancer. And cancer just ate him up kind of on this quest. And to this day, I don't think anyone has raised more money or awareness. He still is generating. There are things every year, but it was like this completely selfless giving. And that's, many Canadians will put him above John Wayne. They'll put him above any other sports or celebrity or whatever. It's, I mean, I find it impossible today to talk celebrity because it's everything from a sex tape to screwing people over for millions of dollars to maybe actually accomplishing something. We just lost Pele, and I don't follow soccer at all, but I know, that man did a lot for that game and to that game.
Yes.
But so I don't know if that answers your question, but I just know Canadians are a good group of people, I think. Yeah.
Well, I do think you answered the question because I think that, I identify as I said, my Canadian mates, and I think it became even more clear to me after I moved to the West Coast that, there's a connectiveness, like even Midwesterners will have this light bulb moment out here that will be like, oh my God, so you could be from Nebraska or you could be from Ohio, but you could have been raised differently, religiously different, culturally different, education different, but there is a moral compass, and Canada is far vast than, you know, the Midwest is. And it's kind of to that point where there's this thing in the soil, and there's always been this relatedness. It's always, I think, one of my that holds bright in my heart with creating with peers unknowingly that happen to come from there, that there is a kindness, there is a thing that's a work ethic, a thing of just showing up and being present and doing things selflessly. And yes, we of course are making extremely general statements right now about a large group of humanity.
Yeah.
But what I love about you and I is the cup is always half full. It's never half empty. And I think that, to my point of view and how I align, you know, you talked about spirit guides, Elvis, Jesus, all the things. Listen, all we are is energy, right? All we are spirit guides being guided by past, present, future, whatever, whether we believe or not. It's like spinning all around us. And we're just a part of one of those many particles that are spinning all around. And how some of us collectively keep spinning and dancing with each other versus others that shoot out into God knows where. You know, it's whether you call it luck of the draw, like I consider this luck of the draw. Like me aligning with Jeremy Ratchford is to me a luck of the draw, because your spirit is so bright. You shine so brightly. You're so, in my book, so underrated. Because you are just so full of things. And I think it's individuals like you that have had so many opportunities, and yet at the same time, to me, it's like untapped. Like I just look at you as just like, oh my God, this man is like up here, and the world needs to know. And you're just that to me. And I don't say that to blow smoke up your, you know, sport coat. I say, I wanted to say dress, but you know, I wanted to assimilate with what you're wearing. I really don't say that. I like it. I don't need to say that. I'm saying that because I mean that from my heart. You know, I was thinking about you yesterday as I was walking our dogs in this vast park out in LA, in what we call the Basin, near Sepulveda Basin. And the whole time I'm having Neil Diamond playing in my ears.
Yes.
And I think of you lovingly and us in filming on location in Pennsylvania, in actually, I mean, why did I just like Pittsburgh? Just like in like where am I? Not
Philadelphia.
Well, Philadelphia. Jesus God, I can't believe I just like. I love Philadelphia, and you so lovingly end up with 3 tickets to go see Neil Diamond, who I never in a million years would have been like, yeah, let's go see Neil Diamond. And to this day, I can see your face right here in the corner of my eye, and Helen to my left, and just having the most joyful experience in this collective gathering of human beings. You might as well have been going to church. It was that great. And I remember hearing him yesterday singing Reverend in Blue Jeans. And I think that those spirits like a Neil Diamond, like a Jeremy Ratchford, maybe a Felicia Linsky, are people who get that, have those spirits, have those platforms, need to align, need to keep pulling forward, need to keep speaking up, are here for greater reasons. And that's why I do this, because I love highlighting people like you, who I think touch a lot of people's lives, and keep doing that. And that's why I asked you about your childhood, because growing up in Canada, I wanted to know, like, what and who influenced you? I know your father was an artist. I, for some reason, can't remember what your mom did, but you know, your father was an artist. So what and who around you was influencing you as little Jeremy?
Yeah, of course, my dad. And my dad had some friends, one being Bill Herzog and another being Dave Simon. And were really big influences on me. Both Bill and Dave had girls. So I became sort of the son that they never had. And Dave Simon was magic, a storyteller, funny as hell. And Bill was funny as hell, but in a real quiet way.
Mhm.
And then I can't throw a stone without coming up with my uncles, Rick and Reg. My mom had twin brothers, Rick and Reg. And their influence on my early days is unbelievable. They are sort of quiet and shy at some point, and then they can be the most loud, boisterous game changers. And I would say you will be able to attest to this, because like I often consider myself the Friday night man. When I get called in to set late on a Friday night, and I know the crew has been beaten all week.
Yeah.
When I'm there, I announce myself and get people going, because I've had many people come to me saying, "We know when we hear you that everything's going to be okay," because it's just we you know, it's that age-old thing in our business too. It's like the sun goes down every day, so why are we always so surprised when it does? We're losing the light, people. We're losing the light. It's like, yeah, because that's what every day, and we know we have to have advanced warning. But I channel my uncles Rick and Reg coming in on those times, because I've also considered that part of my extra duty as an actor, to keep morale up. I'll tell you that there was another one. I was shooting a film in Toronto, and the opening sequence is a Jeep with a commander and a sergeant arriving, and we're in Bosnia, Canadian peacekeepers. And it's this big long monologue like, "Welcome to this is where the trouble is, da 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 da." And as people show up in my unit, I'm sergeant of Unit 2, and we arrive in an APC. That's an armed personnel carrier. And at one point I called it the big white thing. And the army soldiers that we had there never let me forget it and laughed their ass. "Oh, big white thing, APC." But the back of our APC opens up and my guys come out. But because I'm super sergeant, I jump off the top of this thing because I'm up the top in the gun. So I jump off the top. It's about 8 feet, 6 to 8 feet or something like that. Yeah, 8 feet. So I do it over and over again because the one actor keeps forgetting his lines.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
And it's getting a little taxing because on, the eighth jump down from 8 feet, it's like, okay, I got my squats in for the day. And two things happened. At one point, this actor kind of said, "I don't know what to do." And there was a real army guy there, Flanders, they called him, because he looked like Ned Flanders, but his commanding officer also told me that he's the best guy to have because he'll do anything. He's their morale guy. But he heard this, "Oh, I don't know what to do." And he goes, "You know what you do? You know what you do? You get in that fucking van over there and you learn your fucking lines." And everyone kind of went, "Holy shit, I guess." We all wanted to say it, but we couldn't being in the acting field, but this guy said it. But so on my end,
I love the military.
so back on my side, so I'm standing on top of the APC, and we hit that moment that happens on sets where everything pauses and nobody knows exactly why. Wanting to get a battery, like no one knows, but there's just kind of this still. And then when the longer it goes on, the more you feel people going. It would be like being in the starting gates and going, take your. So in the middle of this lull, and the video village was about 150 feet away or whatever. So I stood up on top of my APC and I just went, Brad, to the director. Brad! Brad! And finally, Brad, he goes, what? I said, if anybody asks you, you tell them the two's ready to fucking rock. And all of a sudden, snap, click, bang, rock, rolling, goes, rock. And my guys told me inside the tank, they went, fucking right. It just got everybody going, ah! And he came up to me after the shoot and he said that in that moment, he was starting to freak out a little bit. He says, I think I may have bitten off more than I could chew with this. And he said that moment kicked everything in. And it was just taking those dry, dull, crazy moments. I channel my uncles Rick and Reg, who have that ability to kind of liven it up with one little burst. So they were a huge impact on my life. And then I would even say the neighborhood. I've taken my guys back there a few times, and to know that we knew every backyard. You know, we go to one another's house completely in darkness by crawling through hedges and trees and over fences, and know where the dogs were. And there was something I don't know if my guys really experienced that, because I don't know, we were, the doors were unlocked.
Yeah.
The only time we locked our door was when we went to my grandmother's place, which was an hour away. I always remember, because we'd get home, and usually after the hour-long drive when you're a kid, we'd have to pee. And you'd jump out of the car, run to the door, and be like, we had to wait for my dad to come on and lock the door, because the door was never locked. Yeah, and I just remember being on our bikes all the time, like going away. I kind of laughed. I spent more time with my kids over COVID than I spent with my dad my entire life, because, we came home, we were on our bikes and gone. Came home for dinner, had dinner with my dad, all that stuff. But like COVID, there was like 18 months of 24/7. And it's like, wow. But my dad was always there. But again, on weekends, my guys were like, what are we doing this weekend? It's like, I don't know what you're going to do. Because we were always just out. There's a great meme that has a bunch of bicycles sitting on a front yard. It said, we didn't have social media back then. This is where we knew where everyone was.
Yes.
And there's a great shot of, there was a pool at Waterloo Park. And there was like an Olympic-sized swimming pool. And then there was a diving pool. And the diving was really deep. It had a 3-meter board, a springboard, and another one. And the shot that was online in a group, like it's a Facebook group for people from my hometown. So it's like, take a picture of this, and there's all these bikes on the outside of the fence. And I looked at it, none of them are locked. None of them are chained to the fence. They're just there. And inside is about 100 kids and maybe 2 adults, and then teenage lifeguards. But it's amazing that it's like that we would go there. And I can't even remember what it was. Was it maybe 35 cents to get a day pass to go on this incredible diving board? And that was the other passage, because everybody, invariably, one person a day got up to the 3-meter board and got terrified and had to climb back down.
Of course. Well, it's interesting that you mention all this from the adults in your life and from uncles and family friends and the personalities and their achievements and how they influence you by your observations, and then how it influenced you combined with who you show up being and how you were born to be and your characteristics of how that formulated you, and the neighborhood, and like referencing to these memes, whether it's this was our social influence, i.e. being on a bike and being on it 24/7 when we weren't sleeping or having dinner with our parents or in school. The swim club, be it the local public swim club or the private. I mean, you and I are talking the same talk. You and I had the same. I mean, I was just referencing last week about learning how to ride the bike, and we lived on a slightly bit of a hill, and our house was at the corner of the base of this hill, and then the Tamarack Lane, as it was called, continued on to the next main street, which is where the public elementary school was. So everybody would get me up at the top of the hill and come on, Felicia. And my parents had bought me on my 7th birthday the Schwinn, banana seat bicycle in a blue, not a pink, and a blue. And I get on that bike and I get ready, and like freaking Artie Johnson and Laugh-In, I'd go down the hill and I'd hit our front yard and tip right over. And that would be my braking, because I would be like, I can't do it, but I can, But we would all just be all together, and the foundation of who that formulates us to have become and how we show up being on our daily life. For those of us, especially not especially, I want to take that back, but for those of us who had that good fortune, how we go out into the world and continue to either seek it, replicate it, manifest it, keep throwing those rocks in the water kind of effects, all goes back to those foundational moments that shaped who we are. I'm completely convinced of it. Because when you talk about how you show up being on a set on a Friday night, or in the moment of that hanging pause of what in God's name are we doing here, people? Show up and be a leader for sake. You're getting paid to have this title called director. Show up and be a director. Show up and be a first AD. Don't make me show up and have to shake the snowball kind of thing. But the beautiful thing about people like yourself, people like myself, the reason why I do call this the Camp Fifi Uncensored podcast is when I was a camp counselor, I was in my purest form. I was the leader. I was the comedian. I was the person that everybody wanted to go to be recognized, to be raised up, to they knew that I would be stern and funny and roar like a lion. They knew I was all love. They knew that Felicia was going to get the shit done, and she was the counselor you wanted to have. And going through life, I've always thought of myself as that human being, that beacon of light. And in different environments, your light can shine brighter and your light can be dimmed. And, being a bright light like yourself and going through, having that foundation and setting your sights on. Now, I don't know how, and we'll get to this, but how you formulated your light on, I want to be a performer. Let's go in that direction. I want to know, for somebody like you who does have such a bright light, how you channeled that energy into becoming an artist / performer, and then not allowing for your light that's so bright to have its moments where it could have been, people could attempt to dim it. It's a big one, but I just need to ask. It's a big question.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Now I'm suddenly back in fourth grade where I played the messenger to the king in Rumpelstiltskin.
Mm-hmm.
And we had tables blocking the side of the stage to the audience. That was our little holding area.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one sound that gets me more than anything else. And it's the sound of a theater warming up and the audience. So I first experienced it in fourth grade, but then I did some more, we did some performances at the Center and Square in Kitchener. And to hear a full orchestra come in and boom, 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 and that warmed up and the chatter and people heels going down the hallway, and we'd start to apply the makeup and costumes, but you'd hear the audience slowly filter in and that murmur, and then you'd hear the boom, which meant 5 minutes, and then all of a sudden you didn't see it, but you heard it with the house mics on. When the lights go down and the audience just goes, and it just there, it's starting. It's the best, and that anticipation, and then to be in front of an audience and to hear an audience react, like when 600 people react as one, it's this amazing energy. It's this amazing life force. And I was talking about this something, we did Fiddler on the Roof, and I was both Russian and Jew. And in the wedding scene, I start off as a Jew, and then I run off stage halfway through, change into the Russian outfit to come back in and bust up the wedding. And there's nothing better than on a Sunday matinee performance that have traditionally a lot of kids and families to get booed off stage because you're bad, because kids don't hold back. Like, boo! So to be booed off stage as a villain, that's the other one that you start realizing too. It's usually a lot more fun to be the villain than it is the lead. The lead is always like, I'm on a quest and I got this one little piece of help. Or as my acting coach, David Rotenberg, said, the leading man sort of like didn't have his breakfast cereal that morning, and that's what's, so he's just a little off his game. And then once he gets it together, he'll solve it. But it's like, yeah, the leading man roles oftentimes are just dull. It's the villains that are the fun guys.
That's very fun. And, it's interesting. I don't think that, so I grew up a theater kid as well, but I didn't grow up a theater kid. Like, there was no set plan, like, oh, we're going to make this kid a performing arts kid. But yet I was in all the arts, from dance and fine arts application to performance. And it's funny because all those things you described bring tears to my eyes, get the chills, the whole, like, all of it. I was one of those lucky kids that my family, because my father and the family businesses of fashion took him to New York all the time. I saw Broadway from the time I was like 5 or 6 years old. And I was that kid who literally sat on the edge of my seat and was just like, in my first 2 productions was literally Hello Dolly with Pearl Bailey and Louis Armstrong.
Oh yeah. My God.
Like, and then I saw the original production of Hair, all within like those were my first 2 productions of Broadway. I remember getting on the edge of my seat as a little kid when they came out from under the tarp nude, and I was like, yes. And I would just, you think about, like, when you think about the boys, your children, who, are getting more and more, older as time goes on, of course. And you think about them at that age, and just like that, you said, like kids in theater are just, they'll tell the truth. They'll boo you. They'll do whatever. And I just remember just loving all that energy, loving all that life, thinking like, how do you do this? How do you become a part of this? And yet not really thinking that at the same time, just knowing that my truth was I was an artist and I needed to continue to express myself. I didn't know where it was going to take me. I knew I didn't want to be a starving artist. I knew I wanted to be a successful artist. I wanted to be successful. You and I were raised around people who created success in their life and showed up doing that, whatever it was that they did, whatever that meant. And I think going back to our original stuff about being Canadian, Midwestern, what have you, work ethic, showing up, be loyal, all those things, I think have been probably really important tools in our toolbox to have for being in the artist way of the journey of how you show up and deliver. Like you said, being the Friday night man, I call myself the pitch hitter. Swear to God. I feel like, come in, is there anything, whatever you need, I'll deliver it. So I relate to what you say, because I think, my next question was about, success, and like when you set the path out to, from your young stage of experiences in theater, when did the light bulb for you go off that you wanted to do and set forth into professional lifestyle of being an artist? What was that for you?
Yeah, I think it was my destiny or fate. High school, I did the productions and did assemblies and stuff like that. I was always kind of performing and creative. And then I went the first ever at that same theater that I did the shows at. They had a summer program for acting, or not for acting, but just for, I don't know, theater. I just heard like 80 girls there for dance and 5 guys there saying like, I thought I'd show up to try acting, and it's a lot of dance. Ended up putting on a variety show where I did most of the little vignettes between the dance numbers. But I, through a friend of mine, got introduced to an agent in Toronto and drove down. And my first audition was to play Gilbert in Anne of Green Gables. And I was 19 years old, 6 feet tall. And I was, as my eldest said at one point, you were jacked. Back when the warehouse now was a temple, I was strong looking, I guess you could say.
Right.
I sat down with the director for this audition, and the second I opened my mouth, he started to laugh. And then he said, this is not anything to do with your talent or anything else. I said, but I have to tell you, just hearing your voice and seeing you here, you look like a gorilla opposite the girl we have to play Anne. Like, it just kind of said, like, there's no way we're going to buy me. And I think I was 19 at the time, or 18, 19. And I think Anne had to be 13 or something like that. So it was just like, no, this does not. They needed someone a little. And then my next audition was for a lead in a horror movie, and I got it. And that started one of the most insane sets I've ever been on. Loved every second of it. I was 19, had a blast. And then, came back then started auditioning for commercials, TV shows, and just I kind of learned by working. And loved it, and kind of being fearless. Like, if they ask, I always said, when I'm on set, I'm like a border collie, and you've got the frisbee. Like, what do you want? What do you want to do? Throw that frisbee, and I'll give it a run.
That's so good.
The same thing, and that's just a kind of segue, I guess, but. Yeah, and that's when you trust the people. And then sometimes when you don't trust the people, it's like when they have the frisbee, it's like, no way, Jack, I'm not going after that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's knowing the difference between who's got your back and who doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so going back to Destiny, I mean, I agree. You're definitely, meant to be in front of the camera performing and what have you. That I don't think doesn't mean that I don't see you as giving direction or producing pieces or what have you, but I would say your life force is channeling and entertaining. That I definitely believe is a strong suit of yours. And it's interesting because when I was thinking about our interview, I was thinking about how what I wanted to talk about with you, and the three words that came up was life, acting, and fatherhood. And because I know life experiences is what defines us. Acting is, like, to me, probably your source of a thing that you can thread through much of your life, and how you've seen seasons go on in your lifetime and where you've been depending upon those aspects, starting with, like you said, when you started your professional career at 19, when you got that ball rolling, that snowball was building, so to speak. What was it that got you from being a performer in Canada that got you into now choosing to come to the States?
Yeah, I did a lot of work in Canada, and it got to a point where, excuse me, there was only so much you could do. And, it's sort of like if you want to be a country western singer, you might have to move to Memphis or like if you want to be on Broadway, New York is where you go. If you want to, it's like and Los Angeles has always been, the Mecca. And I had done just about everything I could do in Canada. I'd done some big American projects. I'd do series work. Had my own movies. And it was like the next step was coming down here. I wasn't prepared. When I first got down here, I literally put packages together and sent them to agencies. And then I took out a map and was finding out where the agencies were, because I was going to say, okay, well, I'll meet with these guys on Tuesday morning. I'll go for lunch, and then I'll meet with these guys because they're a few blocks away that Tuesday at 3 or so. And then I was going to plot out the whole. And 3 weeks later, when I still couldn't get past the secretary, I was like, this isn't going the way I planned. It's like, Jesus. And I actually had a test deal before I had an agent, because I knew casting agents down here that were like, well, screw it, come in for this. Just, you've got an agent in Canada if anything needs to be done. But, and during that, kind of drummed up my own kind of, I think I'd shot 6 movies the year before, had opened up the Toronto Film Festival. So I came down here with a big head of steam, and all of a sudden it was like, nah, So just kind of worked hard at it down here, and ended up going back to Toronto or should I say Toronto? Can't say Toronto. And I shot Angel Eyes there. This is that interesting little thing where it's the dirty part of the business.
Mm.
I had to be a local hire, even though I was in Toronto for years.
Mm-hmm.
So they ended up spending more on J-Lo's shoes than they did on garments. Pay my flight. I had to pay my accommodations. I got paid actor scale in Canada with no residuals. But from that, I read for a show called Blue Murder in Toronto and ended up back for 3 years. Between June and November, we would shoot 13 episodes, and real great training ground. We had great writers. We had an unbelievable cast and crew, and we put together a show that was really good. And then I remember it came back down in the hiatus, and my contract was up. It was a 3-year contract. And the day that they called saying, we want to go another year, and we'll try and make things work, but you're going to have to take a pay cut because the funding in Canada was difficult. So that 4th year was going to cost whatever. I wasn't going to make as much. And I said, well, I was just about to call you guys to see where you guys were, because I got to tell you now, I can't come back because I just signed with Bruckheimer on a show called, I think it was called Look Again at that point, or the untitled Jerry Bruckheimer series. And then, then that's the story of that, getting on that show. And again, what a blast that was, because with that old and young casting, I got to work with Peter Graves. I got to ask him if he liked gladiator movies in the middle of an interrogation. Laugh my ass off. Everybody on the crew was like, everybody wanted to ask him that. I did.
So true. Yeah, the depth of that show, i.e. Cold Case, and the level of talent that passed through that show. And it's ironic because, I think I was literally there from the first 2 episodes that you guys ever filmed doing background, ironically. I didn't even know Catherine was the lead of the show. I did not put 2 and 2 together, having already known Catherine, having already had a working relationship with her. But I came in to work this big show that was shooting 2 periods every 8 days. Didn't think much of it, just coming in, pitch hitting kind of thing. Went off, did movies and all my other things that I do, being with personals and so on and so forth, heading up my own stuff. And then I'll never forget literally finishing a run of 3 movies, including a Chris Guest movie, and like just some really special moments, and getting this random phone call down the street, like outside of Poquito Mas, and it's Mary Howard seeking me out, saying that there's this actress, Catherine Morris, who, is requesting you, and are you available, and da-da-da-da-da. And I was, contracted with certain other talent. And I was like, I'm just wrapping up. But if I have these other commitments, I need to be able to address those. And she's like, no problem, whatever you need. Like, we just need you. She just needs you. We want you, blah, blah, blah. And coming in on that Friday, I came in on a Friday, no tests, no nothing, just throw you to the wolves on set, not even on stage, but back near the entrance off of Forest Lawn, where there was an area where you could go do Starbucks, and it led to the lane where production office was. We were shooting in this one spot. And I just remember being like, what is going on? Who are these people? like, ooh, I felt like an island unto myself. Here's this well-oiled machine, because now it's towards the end of third season. And literally the very first day, you guys getting your pickup for your fourth season. And congratulating, like, Catherine, saying, like, that's amazing. Because ironically, when I showed up that Friday morning and I'm in the trailer with my things quietly waiting for her to arrive, going, I hope they've got the right Felicia, because I really right now don't even know, like, if this person is like, this is who, like, if I'm who she wanted. And I'll never forget Catherine coming in on the hair end of that trailer and being like, Felicia. And I was like, oh, Jesus God, thank you, Catherine. And it had been 96 since we'd run into each other, but not worked together since. And now, so it's a decade later. And my heart just was like, oh, thank God. And what the thank God was, a thank God of what people may or may not know, but what you and I know is, when you have the good fortune of having these opportunities in our field that everybody is mesmerized by, that glamorizes, that, thinks all these things about, it's such a crapshoot what we do. Life is a crapshoot, period. Right? We can have our destiny, but we can also miss the, like, train stop. We might have to do a few more, trips down memory lane before we get back to that train stop. I don't have a crystal ball to know how that works. I know what I know, or I know what I've experienced. And, being on that train stop, so to speak, was, I think, life-changing for many people. And it didn't matter if you were a participant interactively, with creating it, or if you're an audience member who to this day is like, this is one of the most favorite shows that people still watch in reruns and wish it still was going, even all these years later, because the quality of the content, the endless amounts of story. Yes, of course, it had its own formula, but the formula was different than all the NCISs. It was different. It had its own original footprint.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, as a creative on the side of the road that I'm the creative, being makeup and hair, even though trained to be a director, couldn't be a director because I was a female. That wasn't going to happen. I mean, I was one of 3 women on a film set when I first started. And I didn't start in the dark ages.
Yeah.
But I was in a boys' club. I was in a locker room the whole time, literally, figuratively, and could hold my own, which is why I think the success continued. Again, whether you talk about destiny or what have you, one of the reasons what I love to do and talking back and forth with guests like yourself is the understanding, having similar stories or not, of these life paths or these career paths. And I think about places like Cold Case, where to have a long running show like that for a 7-season, 6 episodes a season, roughly, is almost unheard of. It is truly winning the lottery. It really, truly is winning the lottery. It does not come easily for every one of those projects that come about. Many hundreds of thousands of scripts never make it to anybody's past somebody's secretary, as you put it. Trying to get to the Jerry Bruckheimers of the world is not. There are many, many alligators in the moat, swimming around the castle, keeping you away from that. So how any of us make it and have a success, I'd like to think it's probably a little bit more than destiny. I think it's, luck and timing and destiny and perseverance and cup is half full.
Yep.
Being an idealist and a realist, illusionary department. A little bit of all of it. And so coming forward with like Cold Case, and we wrapped that in 2010. There's been a lot of life. You became a father during Cold Case. You have raised 3 boys. How has fatherhood shaped you as a man, as an artist, when it comes to destiny?
Oh, wow. That's no small question.
No.
But, well, I don't even know. Like, I love being a dad. And I've got 3 completely different kids. And they're a trip. And the thing I think that's the funny part is seeing the different sides of yourself reflected through them. It's, at some point, it's like looking into a mirror. And it's funny, the mirror just triggered something, but it's in the season. Years ago, it was before Rev was born, so it was just Dex and Wilder. And I have a friend named Jack McGee who had done a Cold Case, and we'd also done a cop award show. But he told me, he said, "Hey, it's Christmas." He goes, "What I do on Christmas, I dress up as Santa." And he said, "You leave the presents outside the front door, leave the front door unlocked, and just make sure the name's on the present. And I come in, do a little Santa routine. I'm out, in 15 minutes. Have your cameras ready," because he does special. So he came in. This was the year my eldest was into Kiss and really wanted an outfit. So we got them this Ace Frehley outfit that Santa gave them. And we were sitting down after having Christmas breakfast, brunch, whatever. And my son turned to me and said, "Dad, tell me the truth." And he looked at me the exact same way I was looking at him, his life, because I would turn to him. If something was, I say, "Listen, tell me the truth. Because if you tell me, we're fine. If you lie to me, then we're not. So even if you broke, like whatever, tell me the truth." And all of a sudden he goes, "Dad, tell me the truth." And I was like, "Oh God," looking right. He goes, "That wasn't Santa, was it?" And I realized I like 1, 2, if you don't start talking, they're going to know that you're lying. And it was like, "You're right, buddy. You're right. That wasn't Santa." Because I think Santa, he's still, because it's still nighttime in Australia. I think he's way over Australia and he's working really busy, but he knew you wanted this outfit. So he sent his good friend, Santa Jack. Santa Jack showed up, and only Santa knew you wanted that Ace Frehley outfit, right? And he goes, he says, "You know how I knew?" And I said, inside I'm going, "That works." I got out of just like, he goes, "You know how I knew?" I said, "Why?" He goes, "I could tell by his ho, ho, ho." And I just saw little pieces of me and him and all this stuff. And then a week later, Jack was performing Frosty the Snowmanalo. It was the Frosty theme to the music of Barry Manilow at the theater right by Warner Brothers. And we went as a neighborhood. So there's like 15 of us. And we were in the parking lot beforehand, and Jack was in it. He's the lead. And Jack sees him in the parking lot, and he just goes, Dad, it's Santa Jack. And it was so cool because he knew it was special. He knew it was kind of unique, and he had that. And then to continue on, no kids are going to be able to watch this because of what I'm about to say. But that was the same way, just in that same theme. He comes to me when he found out. He goes, "Dad, I know." I said, "What do you know about Santa?" Like, what do you know about Santa? He goes, "He's not real." I went, "Okay." I said, "Yeah, I'm cool with it." I said, "You know not to say anything to your brothers." He goes, "Oh yeah." Like, and I love that was like that one of those instant things of when he found out and he knew not to spoil it for anyone else. Like, that was an instant. And then right before he goes, "Same for all the other guys, right?" And then he goes, "Like the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy." I said, "Oh no, they're real." And I have a heart. Oh, and then I even asked him this. We've had some big moments, I guess, kind of like we're now discussing some of those things. We talked about this year. And then I asked these guys, I said, "Do you guys remember the name of your tooth fairy?" And they're like, "No." I said, "You don't?" I wrote you letters from Josephine, your tooth fairy. Your name was Josephine. And I had this really funky custom built bunk beds for my two youngest guys. So my middle guy, Wilder, you didn't get in, like, if this is the bed, you didn't, that went wide open. No, his was like a tunnel. So you got in a bed and then he slept in the back. But they were designed and they looked like Dr. Seuss meets superheroes. And his was the toughest because I had to climb up on this ladder and then climb into the back of this bunk bed over top of him, find his tooth, replace it with the little toy or present or money and a letter, and crawl back out without waking him up. And then we were just sitting around and I said, "Do you guys remember your tooth fairy?" He was like, "No." I was like, "Do you know how hard I worked?" But my Dex did remember coming home because I built this huge, elaborate leprechaun trap. Because that was my first favorite day is Halloween. We used to do up Halloween like no others. And then my second is St. Patrick's Day, just for the leprechauns. Because no matter where I would go on that, I'd stop. "Did you guys hear that?" Because they're always laughing. And I'd do it on this, think. And I had these guys all like thinking leprechauns were real and, always up to mischief. I think that's part of fatherhood. Like, I coached each one of them on either football or baseball. And I had a lot of fun. And it was, I had a groundskeeper come up to me at the end of one of my games, and he said that when he got out of his car, he heard me screaming, and he thought, "Oh, Jesus, this is good." And as he got closer to the diamond, he finally could make out what I was saying. And that's when he broke into a smile, because I was yelling at my team. I said, "Are you having fun? Because if you're not having fun, what are we doing here? Like, come on." And actually it was Danny and I coached one time, and then the next year, this was the year for that. But we had come up with, it was quite funny. I didn't know the seriousness of it. So I signed up to coach. Danny and I signed up to coach because we saw each other at the tryouts. And then you go to drafting. So there you draft your team, and it's trying to keep all the teams equal. And you also pick your team color and your team name. And so we get in there, and it comes up to us, and I said, I knew because I had the Bumblebee outfit. I thought that'd be fun. I said, can we be the Bumblebees? Or the Killer Bees? That's what I wanted, the Killer Bees. And they said, no, it's got to be MLB. And I didn't know what that meant. So I said, hey, can we be the Jedis? And they said, no, it's got to be MLB. And finally they said, Major League Baseball. Oh, we have to pick. Okay. And I said, like, what's available? And they went, Marlins, Astro, Pirates. I went, Pirates? I'll take Pirates. And they said, well, they're not doing really well this year. I said, I don't care how the Pirates are doing. I'm just going to have 7-year-olds as Pirates. Like that's the fun part of this part. And then we came up with the mantra that for Danny and I would yell out to them, who are we? And they go, Pirates. I said, what do we say? And they go, what time is it for the other team? Time to walk the plank. And we would do this just to get them going. And I had a blast. I couldn't believe it. Then the next year, someone got to pick before me. Oh, and I put the Jolly Roger up at the flagpole when we played. Had all sorts of pirate stickers and stuff that you could, the good jobs and stuff. And the next year, someone tried to take Pirates that had just come in. And literally the entire league said, you should probably pick something else because this guy really does the pirate thing. The guy's like, oh, okay.
I almost wanted to continue this interview and just air it in its full 2-parter as one continuum of a 2-hour, 19-minute run. But I will look forward to you coming back next week, and I look forward to hearing next week's drop as we continue this delicious conversation, Jeremy and I. It's exactly why I figured I knew why I love this man, but having this conversation just cemented that in my brain for those very reasons. So I look forward to you joining us next week. In the meantime, join, subscribe, share, listen on any of your favorite platforms, because this is where the spirit is young, the soul is wise, and the life stories are vast. And we talk about everything from soup to nuts, or what I like to say, from cannolis to egg in the holes, and don't forget the s'mores. It's really where connection and conversation happens. And sharing this, building this community is giving it the voice that everybody is wishing for and desiring and looking for, and it's here right under their noses. So I look forward to you joining us. Bye for now.
I often consider myself the Friday night man. When I get called in to set late on a Friday night, and I know the crew has been beaten all week.
Yeah.
When I'm there, I announce myself and get people going, because I've had many people come up to me saying, we know when we hear you that everything's going to be okay. Because it's just, we it's that age-old thing in our business too. It's like the sun goes down every day. So why are we always so surprised when it does? We're losing the light, people! We're losing the light! It's like, yeah, because that's every day. And we know we have to have advanced warning. But I channel my uncles Rick and Reg coming in on those times, because I've also considered that part of my extra duty as an actor, to keep morale up.
Welcome to the Camp Fifi Uncensored podcast, our season 3, episode 6, part 2 of my interview with Jeremy Ratchford, the most talented beyond belief actor and dear friend. Listen as we sit down and talk about those that influence him and how he shows up as the Friday night man that he is. Such a joy, such a delicious human being, and I'm so excited for you to hear the rest of this episode. So pull up a seat, grab that coffee and cannoli, because here we go.
When Dex was in 5th grade, I saw him channel my Uncle Rick and Reg and me, and I was not ready for it. Because Dex is a little quieter and more in tune with my uncles. But he was really tall. He played defense on the flag football team, and he was like a spider monkey in the backfield. He just was amazing. And it was because of him. And this was another kid talking. Another kid said, "We won this because of Dex, because he was so fast and and he was great. But he also, it's kind of funny, it's the APC, middle of the game. Kind of people are running his team and didn't know it. And I'm watching from the sidelines. And all of a sudden he just, "Who are we?" And they go, what was the mascot? Because I had a cheer for them as well. Hornets.
Mm-hmm.
So he'd say, "Who are we?" And they go, "Hornets." He goes, "Who are we?" "Hornets." "Who are we?" And they go, "Hornets." And he goes, "Damn right." And that team would also just go, "Ah!" They would just come alive. And I'm on the sidelines going, "Where the hell did that come from?" Like, wow, I'd never seen it. And I started taking that to the other sporting events. I became the sideline guy, cheering on these different teams because, and I got in trouble, sort of. I had a pair of grandparents get upset with me because I would cheer on both sides. You know, I cheer on my team, but if you were number 26 on the other team and you did a really good job, I go, "Number 26, you're an animal." That became my thing. If I called you an animal, that was a good thing.
Yeah.
And then one kid all of a sudden decided to go, "I'm not an animal." I don't want to engage. No, kid, don't take me on. I'm a fun parent, and but these grandparents looked back at me and they got upset. And they said something, and I walked away. I walked down to the end zone and stayed there. And when the game was over, the parents from the other team started shuffling by me saying, "We love it when you're here." But it was just the grandparents that didn't understand I was there for energy. I was not I didn't cheer when the other team, didn't score, but it was just all about taking these young guys. They have fun at this. And if you win, that's great. If you lose, whatever, rise above and hold your head up. And to go back to the Hornets, I had a running gag too. I said that I had people believe this, but I'd say I got kicked out of a game because they didn't like my cheer. And my cheer was, "When I say whore, you say nuts, whore." And that's exactly it. So then I took that to in the coaching thing too. When we were the Buccaneers, I was on the sideline going, "What do we pay for corn?" And then, "About $1 a ear." "What do pirates? How much do pirates' earrings cost?" "About $1 an ear." And then the next year we were soccer. We were Uruguay. And Uruguay. And I said, "If you're not a girl, Uruguay." And I tried to get that one going. And then, when we were the Yankees, we were chanting, "I'm walking here," just having fun. And again, kids that didn't know any better, but my teams always had fun.
Yeah. Well, and no surprise. No surprise. Again, you're the ideal leader. You are the head camp counselor. You are the grandpapa daddy-o. Like that's why, and fatherhood is not all fun and games. It's not. You've had a lot of I'm sure you've had plenty of life challenges that have maybe at times even had you go, whether it was how did I get here, or how do I make this work, or I never saw this coming, or please, whomever a greater power is, get me through this too, or and to that point, what would you say to things like that, and what would you say to men who are grateful to have the kids that they have in their life and have been faced with challenges, whether it's, through marriage or through life, just in general? What would you say?
There are a bunch of great quotes that you can kind of hang your hat on to, but excuse me. Mm-hmm. You'll never know how strong you can be until you have no other choice. And when there's no other choice, you realize, oh, okay. And it's not to ask, why is this happening to me? You should ask, what do I have to learn from this? And other mantras. But yeah, that sense of giving up, never.
Right.
And
that's so key.
I always liken it too. I said, being Canadian, it's like walking through a snowstorm. It's like sometimes the wind blows so hard that you can't move forward, even though everything you're doing is to move forward. And sometimes the wind lets up and it gets a little easier, but don't think it's going to be easy. And you just got to keep going. And there's been so many times I've had these different visions, and the snowstorm is one, and there's always a light way, way away. And as long as you keep moving towards it. And the other one's the swamp. At one point, I felt like I had my 3 guys. I had a vision and a dream, kind of like my guys are all on my shoulders, and I'm walking through kind of waist or almost chest high swamp. And, trees and we don't know where the gators and the crocs are. We don't know, but there is a campfire way away, and I got to just keep going, keep focused, and keep my guys above water. And that's what you do.
Well, that is such an integral part of my belief system, of the get back up mentality, that there's always a focus, that there's always, I remember being told during domestic violence by the violator, I don't know whoever told you life was easy. Huh. It's like, thanks for the takeaway.
Yeah.
And, being an idealist, realist since I was a little girl, been always knowing that, you don't come in as an innocent baby knowing that your life is going to be filled with whatever it's going to be filled with. And the things we have control over versus we don't have control over, but the things we have control over is ourselves and our mindset and our perspective and our cup is half full mentality, and that we do keep getting up no matter how hard the wind is blowing and how much the snow is up to, here. And And the difference in that, I think, is those who end up being the inspirations to many, and the teachers and the influencers, the social influencers riding the bike, that are like, come on, everybody, let's get on the bike and go. I mean, I see you like that. I see myself as like that. I think that ironically, knowing you when I met you in 2006, and knowing how much life in the last 16 years has happened for both of us, ironically, so much more life has happened. We both are wearing, like, our belt loop is like, out here, like that's how much life we've strapped in. And we don't even know all the ins and outs of each other's story. I just know from what we both know that it's a lot. And yet what I love about our two spirits, and I think is so important, such great takeaway, especially in entering a new year and lease on life and goals and, all the things. It does start with our mindset. It does start with our intention. It does start with our hearts and we make a decision. Sorry about the dog. We make a decision. We make a decision that, this too will not be the last, hooray. This is just the beginning. And like you said, what am I here to learn? I mean, nobody asks for things such as whether it's divorce or dealing with addictions or dealing with abuse or dealing with cancer or dealing with financial, struggles at times or what. But also, with that said, it, I think, brings us to appreciate and bring perspective to the table and give understanding to the, how to manage your life in a way that is resourceful and is positive and is positive, life changing, that helps many in the big scheme of it all. I think that those things that people go, oh, Jesus, like, thank God that's not me. What I say to people is, nobody asks to go through certain things. We don't get married to get divorced. We don't fall in love with people to wake up one day and realize I've aligned with somebody who has an issue, whether it's with, abuse or with alcohol or whatever, or that genetically might have a disposition that their health might be challenged, like whatever. Those are not negative things, by the way. I'm not going down some dark lane here. I'm saying that life presents us an evolution of things, and who do we show up being? Can you speak on, like, when you think of your 19-year-old self and then you think of yourself today, a few decades later, you have to be proud of your achievements and what you bring to the table.
Yeah, I would almost say so far so good. Kind of to that effect too. As my boys are getting older, the conversations change.
Mm-hmm.
And they start asking about this, that, and the other thing. And I was at an event, a charity fundraiser thing, and there's some hockey players there. The guy came over to me and he was just, he just found out that I was from Canada and I was on that show, and it's his mother's favorite show. And he just was looking at it, shaking his head. He goes, "We did it." He said, "Eh?" He said, "I'm from bumfuck wherever, and I'm playing for the Avalanche." And he said, "Where are you? You're from Kitchener? Hey, you're down in Hollywood on TV." He was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool."
Yeah.
Because I think I don't know, just on that silly level, how many people from my hometown actually got into acting and made a living at it. I don't know if I'm the first person from Kitchener to have been in an Academy Award winning Western with the icon of Westerns, Clint Eastwood.
Right.
So there's some cool things like that, and perspectives, and just, well, in this business, this magic business that we work in,
Mm-hmm.
where it's misfits from every walk of life come together and put on a show. And who knows if any of us would get along otherwise, no way. But when it comes to, you kind of brought up camp, like got back in the day, it was like, you'd go away for 6 weeks, and you're in this camp, and there's people that cook, there's people that water ski, there's people that, arts and crafts, and we all come together and bring these talents to put on a show. And some guys I've worked with a few times now, the Nelms brothers, they're magic that way too, in that everything they do is for the betterment of what's on the screen. Because if what's on the screen is as good as it can be, then your audience gets the reward. And it's incredible, just because that environment, and they're at the top, they're the head of the fish, I guess, and they set that tone. And it's amazing how everybody, because I've been on some gigs where it's like, if you touch one other tradesman's area, grievances, it can get crazy, especially in your hair and makeup. There's times it's like, that's not right. I was like, some people can get, and that's, that happens.
But you talk on the magic and the understanding, and what you just touched base on is something that not everybody understands and knows, but people who walk that walk. I get that every kid doesn't get the opportunity to be exposed to a summer camp where they're not with their own bloodline and they're living under the roofs with a bunch of other people from a bunch of different family homes. But they learn togetherness, they learn to live together, they learn community, they learn collaboration, they learn what creating a unit together in that harmony in that moment. And then you have the pleasure of doing that a repeated amount of times throughout your childhood or your young life, even through college. I think it sets people apart. It's not about setting people apart or dividing people. It's about taking those magical skills that you've learned and replicating them in worlds like corporate America, international affairs, making movies, creating, educational systems. I think that is the epitome of how to teach, live, show up, be, and continuously create that magic. I feel that is a foundational strength. I know that that's the walk I walk, every trailer I walk in, and I know this is not the reality, but in my mind and my heart, I walk in we're creating a great camp session. We're creating a great opportunity to collaborate. And like you said, not everybody is given, you didn't say it, but I'm paraphrasing in between the lines. Not everybody comes from that same mindset of we're here to co-create. That's why I always say this is, the reason, again, why I use this platform and the way I have is because I believe in gathering around the campfire, being your truth, being your pure self, showing up authentically, sharing things that really do matter. Many of the conversations in this conversation we've already had are very valuable nuggets of life reasons of what matters. If we're going to talk about what matters, it's these little elements that are the great stepping stones to a great life. A great life does not mean you have to be, the 1% billionaire who selfishly gathered their thing and said, hey, look at my planes, look at me, do what I do what I say. But no. To me, the masters, the gurus, not even the gurus or the masters, but the spirits that really are life changers, are game changers, are people who talk the way we're talking, in my humble opinion, because it's all about perception. It's all about experience. It's all about observation and application and the getting up and the not stopping and being in that snowstorm. And, it is a big vision. I don't know that little Jeremy and little Felicia were like, we got a vision and we're going for it. But I bet we were freaking cute, cool little kids who I could totally see come on, let's go. And we'd be on that playground from your dodgeball to on the ice hockey, ring and being I'm sure we were those spirits, quiet, but we could roar like no other. And I mean, when you think of a vision and you think of a mission, do you think in your perspective of where you are at in life? Because let's face it, you knock wood, have a good 30, 40 more that you have here to lay down a path and to really do some incredible things from where you've already achieved. And looking at vision and mission, how does this formulate where you are at and what you imagined, and where do you see yourself, wanting to go from here?
It's kind of funny because I hear that question, but I also kind of right now, I find lately a lot of the perspective or question, somehow we just lost 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
COVID hit 2020. It's now 2023. And I've been talking with people, and it was sort of like, oh, yeah, well, last time I saw you. And you're going to go, that could have been 4 years ago. 4, 3, what?
Yeah.
And it almost, I'm getting a vision now, sort of like, it feels like we've been in a paint shaker,
Mm-hmm.
the Home Depot, and
Mm-hmm.
come out, it's like, what? And I noticed it, I think, through my youngest son the most, because he's 12 years old, but he's really 800 years old. But he grew a foot and his voice changed. And at the beginning of the pandemic, he was still a little kid, but now he's sort of like a young man. Happened like that. And I have the guy in the mall or wherever, when I'm out and I see a dad with his kids, and I'll just say, blink, especially when I'm walking with my guys, I'll turn and say, blink, and they're this tall. It's like that. But again, with that 3-year chunk, it's like opening the door. And in Canada, when the winter hits, then there's that one day in the spring where you open the door and you can smell the warm air. The
Yeah.
air is warm. It's no longer, it's just, and everyone comes like, ah. I think we're starting to have that, but still at the same time, what, 7,000 COVID cases over Christmas?
Oh, yeah, no. And there's going to be probably more revealed for that which you know of versus what you'll never know of from a home test or no test.
So it's still being in that. I remember when I got my vaccine a year in, I think it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I got my first dose of the vaccine, and I thought I was going to be a lot more like, yeah, like, but it wasn't. I was relieved, but what it really brought up was I've taken a step to protect myself, and then realized that for that entire year, every trip to the grocery store that you had to make was risk.
Yes.
It instead of being a relief, it was just like, holy shit, like that Russian roulette of
Mm-hmm.
and then the polarization,
Mm-hmm.
of the planet. And I think because the toughest part about it was you had no idea. It was Russian roulette. You could get it and it could not affect you in the least.
Mm-hmm.
You could get it and you could die.
Mm-hmm.
And then be down for a couple of weeks, get it and be down for 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
No. And then the fear and turned into the hatred, turned into thing where I posted on Facebook years ago, one November 11th, we were all in the car, me and my 3 guys, and I was talking about Remembrance Day, and I was talking about my grandfather who I never met, but I'd heard the stories. And I had told him how he was 19 years old in the First World War and had to pee on his bandana and cover his face with that to counteract the mustard gas that was being shot into the trenches. A 19-year-old kid. And had he not covered his face with that urine-soaked mask, we all kind of had this really, like, none of us would be in the car right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when I saw people having conniptions at Target or a grocery store or wherever about not wanting or having to wear a mask, whether it was effective or not, you were asked to do just a little something for the betterment protection of others. And yeah, it's well, I'm kind of getting off a little here, but
No, it's perfect. You're perfect.
I remember reading Stephen King's The Stand.
Mm-hmm.
The whole premise of that is something gets out from a lockdown facility and it's a virus that kills. And what ends up happening is that there's 2 types of this in this society. One that see Mother Abigail, an old Black woman on a rocking chair in a country home, and then the walking man. And I was amazed. I remember reading that book, this is like 30 years ago, and kind of going, wow, that could happen tomorrow. Like, honest to God, we don't know the, Area 51, whatever the hell. But it's amazing how it is. There's just those 2 parts of society that are just, and that's, I think, another thing that's happened as a result of it. This country, it's so funny because the diversity in this country is insane.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane. And that's at the base of the Statue of Liberty. You
Mm-hmm.
know, come here. We take all.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to find that in almost any other country.
No.
And yet now we've become this country that is either black or white. There's no gray. You know? But there is a weird gray, not to get political, but
No, it's true.
you think abortion is murder, but you want to have the right to have an AK-47,
Yeah.
75 bullets into someone that might try and steal your television. I don't understand that.
There's nothing to understand.
Yeah. And, you know, sort of that luck of the draw. If you were lucky enough to have been born in, and there's, I would say there's a few other societies too that, you know, you could say, hey, that's okay. They're not all full of hate, but yeah, there's a hatred in a group of people in this country that I just don't understand. And I wouldn't want to live a minute in their heads, because I just think of that. If it's that level of hate, I break it down. If it's racism, homophobia, whatever the fuck it is, think of all the things that you can't enjoy because of your view. All the food that you cannot enjoy because it'll have a racial, well, that's that kind of food. No, that's a, and all the joy in your life that you're going to lose because of what? You know?
Limited beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you know, you and I were born at a time also, I think, Jeremy, that our connections to our lineage, our legacies were really instilled upon us. You know, we were taught, whether we knew them or not, whether they were still alive or not, we were taught where our families came from, what they did, their work ethics, their applications, their pride, their you know, what they sought to do to, you know, have us all be here. And then in a greater collective movement, you know, we were raised in, and I don't know how directly this was affecting you guys being a kid in Canada, but, you know, growing up as a kid with the Vietnam War, civil rights, women's rights, interracial rights, voting rights, women being able to even work and, you know, let alone have choices over their body or what have you, interracial marriages, you know, like just the list goes on. And one of the things that I observe is the difference in, my brother and I were actually talking about this, the difference in teaching civics and civic duty versus not teaching those things so much, I think, today in schools. I don't know for sure that they do or they don't, but how there's certain generations that just don't seem to really understand and know how they got to where they are and the opportunities that have been doors open because of, on the backs of many, whether they were using an example of urinating on your, you know, your mask and putting it up to your face, or your scarf and putting it up to your face to save the life, to now have generations of men carrying your name forward, or, you know, women being able to work in environments today that never could get past the stage of being a secretary if they were lucky enough to do that, let alone leave the house, even if you were fully educated. Like, just, you know, things that were just never, or the
No.
ability, pardon?
just on that one note, that it's like it's like a Grand Canyon sized question for me. That's one part I don't get. And what is it? Is it fear? I don't know. But the whole, is it suppression of women?
Mm.
I just, it's insane. It's in religion, in business, and it's sort of, I always go back to, I love them. And if you love something, you want the best for it. So if I love you, I'm not going to say, you can't do this, you can't do this, and you can't do this. And that whole, like, yeah, there's only so far they can go in the church. I don't get it. And, in Afghanistan, then they just say women can't go to school now again. And they're going, why? Why? What the fuck is wrong?
Well, it goes to a mindset. It's not just cultural and religious beliefs. It's just a whole lot of doctrine of a brainstorming, brainwashing. I came back from Morocco in 2016, right before number 45 was put into office. And I remember coming back, and I had been working there doing a movie. And again, I was one of like 3 American women on this project. And I was with, my actor was an Academy Award winning actor who brought me along, and I was taking care of him. And it wasn't easy because he was all, he was concerned, being somebody of a religious belief, that, we're not in a country where, many Jews have left Morocco for the sake of, safety and reasons and freedom and so forth. And being raised a Sicilian Jewish kid myself in the Midwest in the 60s, you learn that you were a minority on top of a minority. Mm-hmm. And, there were, your parents had an interracial relationship, and finding your voice and accepted and all the things, even if you looked like a little white-faced, freckle-faced kid, you were really, your family wasn't allowed in the country clubs or wherever they might have earned the right to be. But no, you're not getting past that front gate. And then also being raised with a woman who was only 2 years younger than Ruth Bader Ginsburg and had a full liberal arts education in an advanced university and tried to become an attorney like in the late 50s, early 60s. And my father drove her to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and they sent her home saying, go home and be a mother and a wife. And I grew up in 4 generations of families that worked hard, including the women, and had their own businesses and were educated. So I knew that and I was around a lot of successful people. So I never thought of any limitations, but I was very cognizant of the fact that all the people around me were fighting for other people's rights to live, to thrive, to speak, to have a voice, to have a space, a place, to be educated, to love who they love, to vote in, to contribute their ballot, the whole 9 yards. And I remember coming home from Morocco and saying to my women friends back then, hey man, if you don't know how lucky you are to be able to have open-ended conversations, you better get in tune with it right now. And this is before we even knew who was coming into office. That's the irony. And my girlfriends would look at me like, like a dog, like with the head cocked, like, what are you talking? I'd be like, man, wake up. You're lucky that, if you choose to no longer be with the person you married, and you have the right to end that you're, good, bad, or otherwise, You're lucky you can do that. You're lucky, you know, for all the reasons to express yourself, the whole 9 yards. And I don't think people realized how quickly, like you said, taking the book The Stand, how quickly something can happen. And taking a pandemic and taking now how all these 80, 90, and 100-year-olds who fought for so many things that were so pinnacle based upon wars and depression and pandemics and immigration and legacy and life and trying to pass along something of value, whether it was economics and land that was able to be bought, or a business that people took pride in, or just a simple just love legacy that went through generations. People don't realize just how important all of that is, how that makes you who you are, how we carry forward in the world, how we have these visions and these missions, and not doctrines or trying to indoctrinate by all of our limited beliefs, but rather our ability to stay present, open, and expansive to what is possible. And I think that, again, in us talking back and forth, I think one of the things that you have said without saying it specifically is just that. It's about being present, about being open to what's possible, about not being closed-minded and limited in your belief, but knowing that every day things can happen, every day things will happen, change is inevitable, staying present to it, you know, like just defining, like, you know, in a blip, how the boys have just like in 3 years, or not seeing people that we would normally interact with or break bread with. You know, I relate to that very much. I mean, this has been my connective source, even though I've been on a lot of sets over the last few years. This has been far more my way of expanding my horizons, for the better, hopefully for the betterment, and hopefully for positive contribution. But it is interesting how, in reflection of seeing what people's takeaways are, going back to a mask and staying safe and making a contribution. I come from a medical background. I was pre-med. So, you know, I'm a fine artist with a pre-med and a film theater. Like, that's who I show up being. So I'm both sides of the brain are firing. And I'm all heart. So people I love and come first until, you know, I decide that nature is much more important. And I'm a little bit of all of it. When it came to the mask, and I never held back on saying this, before we actually officially went into a pandemic, I had been with the lead man on a show, and his hair individual showed up on a Monday morning, like it's a Monday morning today. Hadn't even stepped in the trailer. I opened the door, saw her, and went, "Oh my God, this person is riddled. She's like, she speaks bacteria. She's viral with whatever it is that she's got." And I gave her a look of like, "What are you doing here? We work on number one. Like, you can't expose number one to like whatever it is that you got going on. You're going to shut down a whole production. Like, why didn't you stay home and make a call?" And it wasn't a judgment. It was like, "Babe, you can't possibly be feeling good. What are you doing here? And we got number one that we're responsible for, and we can't expose them." What do? I go directly to my drawer, no bullshit. Go directly to my drawer, pull out a K95 mask and a pair of gloves, and immediately put them on. This was pre-pandemic. I always have had K95s in my drawer, and I've always had gloves in my drawer because I touch people for a living. And I have a responsibility to myself and to you. And production. If I could tell you how many eyes rolled in the trailer when they saw me walking through it with a mask and gloves on, and as if I had a horn coming out of my head.
Yeah.
And my response is, in the medical world, we wear masks to protect the innocent individuals who are not doing well at the time. That's what we do. I have nothing else to add.
Well, there was a time when people scoffed at surgeons washing their hands between patients and sterilizing do you call them utensils?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something I thought just knife and fork. But they scoffed at that. And
yeah, I mean,
always that's the thing that always gets me. It's that you're out of your fucking mind, and then when it becomes commonplace, it's like, well, of course.
Yeah.
You violently opposed it.
Yeah. No, and it's interesting because, you know, I was curious with being able to spend all the time with the boys you did, and I'm certain that being teacher and father and homemaker and all the things that you had to be and that you are anyhow, but like all of a sudden it was like impacted by this separation and survival mechanism, and now you're it, you know, and go. Did it feel like a gift, or did it feel like what is your takeaway from that? Because obviously nobody would wish the pandemic to be, but I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I had that vision too. Another vision came up. One of the biggest fears I had during the pandemic was that if I did get sick, I would never see my guys again. And they wouldn't be able to come see me. Like it would be through Zoom or something.
Yeah.
And kind of carrying around that fear. I think that was going back to the vaccination, and I thought I'd be like, woo, but it was like, no, I was like, okay, I've taken a step. Doesn't mean I can't get it, but it means that I've taken a step towards protecting myself. Knowing that fear was in one of your pockets at all times, 3 years. And then there's the other fears of like, if that did happen, and if I did die, like if this thing takes me out, and there's no knowing whether it will or it won't, but the potential is there. So you look at like just that ever present, and you don't until it's over. And it's not over, but it's a lot better. I can even feel in my neck and shoulders right now. It's still like, oh my God. It's exhausting. And then kind of on top of that, you still gotta, it's almost like life is beautiful. You gotta let your kids know that it's serious. But as their dad and protector, want to kind of, I don't want them walking around in that fear that I have, or what, you know, and who knows. But as a result of the pandemic, there was so much time to fill. My youngest and I started just watching shows. And we started off with 70s disaster movies, which is hysterical. And that's been another eye-opening thing. Everybody smoked everywhere in the 1970s.
Oh my God, yeah.
Like surgeons are, it was, we watched Columbo, and I love Peter Falk. And I was watching one yesterday with Cassavetes, and he's in Cassavetes' house. It's a mansion, and he lights up a cigar in the foyer. And I was like, yeah, he didn't ask. Like, just that whole, and smoking in an elevator, smoking in a hospital, smoking. And then there were a couple, the treatment of women is very interesting. A lot of those 70s movies, and some Chuck Heston kind of, but yeah, we had a riot because we binge watched Starsky and Hutch of it. And like just seeing things like My Guys, them, you see the striped tomato screeching down the street and screeching to a halt, and they jump out and have to feed a quarter into the phone and dial the police station because they don't have the radio's knocked out, but no one has cell phones. It's like, that's funny as hell. So we got to see, we watched some Chips episodes that, to think that that was the #1 show.
Oh my God, I know.
And to think that, you know, one of my biggest beefs, I think, of our industry is how, like, whatever your call time is, you just assume it's going to be a 12-hour day minimum. And I remember there was a cameraman on our show that would kiss his kids goodnight on Sunday night, lived in the town, but would not again until Saturday morning because he was. And when he got home, they were asleep because they were little. So if he got anywhere after 8 o'clock, they were in bed already. And that's the one thing about our business. When did it become, like when I started, an hour-long show took 10 days to shoot, and guest star, and you had a certain, like if I had this beard, I wouldn't shave it off for 2 weeks just in case they had to do a pickup. And that was the unwritten rule. But it was 10 days. Now we can shoot an episode in 7 days. We don't have to reload film. We can edit online. We get like all these things, but we're still 18-hour days, like 6-hour days. But there's he just passed recently, Carl. I don't know why I always blanch on this man's name. He was one of the creators of Happy Days.
Oh,
his son was Meathead on All in the Family.
Oh, Reiner, Carl Reiner.
Don't know why, just brain fart.
Yeah.
Carl Reiner was shooting on the Warner Brothers lot. Said that first day at the 10-hour mark, he said, ladies and gentlemen, after 10 hours, I can no longer be creative, so I'm going home. You can stay if you want, but I'm going home. And I think we got to bring that back. You got to bring back, like, I don't know why our industry has to beat the health and safety out of its own people to create what's on. Because I thought, like, if people had that and were making chips, it's like, that's not worth it. That's not.
No, it's not worth it. But I also think that there are those who do that stuff, and then there are those who don't and have no sense of reality. Those who are making decisions in a tower on Avenue of the Stars in Century City, and lawyering the contracts, don't live that lifestyle. I'm not saying they don't work hard. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that they don't have the option to work 24/7. I'm not saying that. But they're not beholden to somebody else declaring when they show up and when they finish. And they're not beholden to whether they miss their kid's baseball game or dinner or what have you, in the same way that a crew member for instance, or a person committed to, in an acting perspective, committed to those long running projects where you're in most scenes or many scenes throughout those days of that episode or that movie. And it's episodic almost more so because of how that structure is. I mean, a movie, we know, movies have changed so much anyhow. So it's really a per project situation, but I don't know. I think that people also, I personally, being a trained filmmaker, being somebody who never understood initially getting into the business that it's a two-class system. I never understood that the industry was developed based on a two-class system, the white collar system versus the blue collar system, the above the line versus the below the line. Below the line is not meant to do anything but be a factory worker and work around the clock. When I've had, and you know how much I love actors or people, I know when things have been said in a chair in a makeup room, when an actor who's paid a lot of money, and I say this with love, I'm going to say this with love, but is paid a lot of money and lives a very nice lifestyle and is maybe on 1 out of every 8-day run of an episode, and then has the, kahunas to make statements that if it was said on a stage floor in front of an entire crew, mutiny would be bountiful.
Yep.
And the sense of just me versus us. And I think that runs rampant through our whole industry, all the way up the pole. I think there's a lot of me versus us. I think there's too much division, not enough collaboration, and not enough sense of what's important all together to bring the best product forward. And I do think that there is, when you build a business based upon entitlement and you don't build it upon value and quality product, and not to say that it wasn't always that way, but I think it became much more, the system started a long time ago, and the system has, run amok for different reasons. Like you could talk about like in the late 80s when the writers' strike occurred, no disrespect to writers and producers. But when that happened and all of a sudden you had 20 different titled producers who could not make a decision, one leader, that became a muck. But yet don't know shit about production, have never spent a day shooting an actual production, don't know what it's like to show up at 2, 3, 4 in the morning and stay 18 hours a day.
Yep.
And know when and when not you can go out to lunch or go to the bathroom or stop being present. It's a mindset. It goes back to mindset and integrity. And think people, I would watch agents come onto sets who I freaking went to school with. I was in Sunday school with, I went to school with, and the mindset of I'm better than you, mind-boggling to me. There's just a great sense of divide in this industry, I think, and it's so deeply rooted. And to eradicate it has to be led by real leaders, by real seers, by real experience, not just because I got an Academy Award or I made millions of dollars or I had a long run of. No, I mean people who really done the work. Those are the people that need to be in place of that.
United Artists on that premise, right? United
Artists. Yeah.
Because they all got together as a collective saying, why the fuck are we letting these people tell us what to do when we can do it ourselves?
Right. And the Charlie Chaplins of the world, for instance, when he would tell a story about people, it's because he did know what it was like to integratively do all the things, and everybody around him do, because they did a collective storytelling. I used to, as a film kid, sit in rooms by myself and study Charlie Chaplin movies. How do you tell story? How do you tell story with no sound? How do you tell story visually? How do you, in every aspect, know when, where, and how something's happening? It's a great training rule of thumb. But also, in our world of what we create, how is it, like, again, I look at women and I go, you have no idea how lucky you have it right now. You have no idea. When I was in my 20s and I became a department head like that, and I was self-taught, and I didn't get mentored, and I didn't come up through an apprentice program, and I had the opportunity, which I was very, very grateful for. I had people trying to slip their key into my fanny pack, and I had people, trying to do all sorts of things. And I just kept focusing on, I am hired to do a job and deliver, and I've got millions of dollars riding on my back, and I am here to create art and tell story. But not everybody, Jeremy, has that same vision. Going back to vision.
Yeah.
Most people don't look at this business as a business. They're either in the business to make a ton of money and they have no artistry whatsoever.
Yeah.
Or the artists have no sense of business and responsibility. And so therefore they're looked at like the clown over there who's just like, oh, they're disposable.
Yeah.
No, man, you need people like you and me who are artists and business sense minded and have a passion for the beauty of this industry, who are actually collectively getting together going, with all of our years of experience, we know what great storytelling is. We know how to treat people well. We know the importance of foundation and family to go out then into the world and make a contribution that matters, that entertains, that teaches, that inspires, that creates legacy. We know how to manifest success. We know the importance of the dollar circulating and leveling up. And no, not everything is just keep rolling, because it's disposable now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So on that note, I just want to end this because you and I have just spent the most delicious 2 hours together that I feel really fortunate for. Going forward, with the things that you with where you're at and things, what, if you could share the philosophy you live by, do you have a philosophy that you live by?
I don't know that I have a mantra.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in don't hurt anybody. It is sort of like the age-old do unto others as you would have done unto you. Look out for each other. I don't. Now I'm looking at, like, if there was something I would write on my wall to say, it's funny because that's the only thing I've ever thought of really putting on my wall was a quote I read in I don't even know the author of it, but a woman turns to a man at the table and she says, "You're a full portion of something I don't like." And I just laugh. I just love, it's that noir vernacular. Look out for each other, I think. I did one of those YouTube moments of people taking care of each other, and they get me every time, because that's what it's about. You see, a racer at the end of a marathon that collapses. There was a great, the guy was in second place, and he saw the guy ahead of him misread the directions to get him. He went the wrong way, and this guy went, "No, stop, come here, it's this way." And he said he was going to win had he not had that bumble. And he said, "I'm not about to go, ha ha ha, you missed the turn." And because he said he just thought, he goes, "How could I explain that to my mother?" Which I just thought was so adorable. It's being that type. Yeah, put a smile on someone's face. Go without ego. Yeah, take care of each other. That's, I think, one of my biggest. I think we'd all be a lot happier. Oh, and mind your business. Just to kind of on that whole, I find so many of today's hot issues. I don't give a fuck who you marry. None of my business.
Right.
If you're in love, you can marry any, as long as, and that's the other, you can't marry a toddler. Like there's fucking
Right.
Also, like, there's just some fucking common sense to something. So I don't give a fuck who you marry. And I don't give a fuck what choices you make with your own body, as long as it doesn't hurt me or hurt anyone else. None of my fucking business. And that's minding your business and letting people. It's like, and it's that thing too. It's like, when you're in my house, I have a certain set of rules, and I would ask you to adhere to them. And when I'm in your house, if you say, "Oh, could you take your shoes off?" Not a problem. Could you, not curse? Not a problem. Your house. I will respect the rules in place, because I always have the choice. If you say, "Well, no, now to be in my house, you have to be naked," be like, then I'm not coming to your house. I have that say, and remove myself instead of saying, "You can't say that to me," right? It's just like, no, I'm just not, it's none of my business. And now I'm going to make it none of my business. Be nice to everybody and mind your business. I think maybe I'll put that on my wall today.
Well, the human kindness is real. The human kindness is there's no price you can put on that, because it's so powerful and so bankable. I think I always say we're each other's greatest bank accounts, because all we have is each other.
Yeah.
So this exchange is, to me, like, what makes us rich, what fuels the fire, what keeps us alive. Because it is inspiring. It is, learning. It is carrying forward. I do believe that there is no reason to hurt one another. A violent act is just coming from fear and insecurity, and somebody else having been hurt by somebody else. And we need to stop that chain of events. And, we need to stop making money doing war, and we need to stop in our own households creating violence, and stop repeating that shit, and get balanced out in a way that, we have a healthier world. And so human kindness is, like, to me, everything. I mean, when you talk about a baby, or you talk about a flower, you talk about an innocent animal, like, every one of these elements needs love and nurturing in order to grow and survive and thrive.
Yep.
It's really simple. We all need it.
This just came to mind, but watch, it's like an 8-part documentary, Ancient Apocalypse.
Ooh.
It's fascinating.
Okay. Absolutely. I will. On that note, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your time. For me, you're like the most delicious meal a girl could ever wrap her mouth around, but that doesn't sound very good. It sounds very Felicia.
Yeah.
It sounds, in boarding school, they thought I was going to be writing like the 4th or 5th edition of Masters and Johnson. So, for those who know me a long time would think, well, that was relevant to what Felicia thinks, but that's not what I meant. I meant that, you fill my soul with love, and you are just such an extraordinary human being. And I think you are a gift to humanity. I think you're a gift to the arts. I think that you are just a gift. And I thank you for being my gift today and for my life.
You're so sweet.
Well, but it's true, Jared. It's true. Everybody, I think, has their lot in life, and I think everybody drives their own train the way they choose to. And I think sometimes, it's in a Bentley, and sometimes it's in a Honda Civic. Sometimes it's,
missing a wheel.
Exactly.
And broken away.
But I would go. Yeah. But I would be in trenches with you any day of the week, any year of my life, going back to our original, like, early part of our conversation with the military guy, like, just get in there and learn your lines. Like, I would be in the trenches with you anywhere, because I know it would be coming from a place of love. I know the job would get done. I know we come out laughing and singing and being proud of what we achieved. I know we'd be greater for it. I know that we would have left a contribution that we would be proud of, and that we would look forward to doing more of the same.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah.
So thank you.
Love that.
I'm so happy that I got to share Jeremy Ratchford, who's, to me, one of the most underrated actors right now, currently in the industry. And I am so grateful to be able to share this beautiful human being story and just see a little bit of why I adore this man so much. And I'm so grateful that you were able to join us, and look forward to you joining me next week for my new guest that I cannot wait to share. In the meantime, share, join, and subscribe to the Camp Fifi Uncensored podcast as we build this community, as we expand into season 3, where we talk more about all the things from soup to nuts, or what I like to say, from cannolis to egg in the holes, because there is no conversation, no connection, and no human being that isn't worth having a conversation with and being able to enlighten and share their stories, because it's where the spirit is young, the soul is wise, and the life stories are vast, that we here at the Camp Fifi Uncensored podcast want to share this beautiful platform with you. So much love. Till next week. Bye for now.